Doctors and teachers are holding more demonstration protests in Honduras even after the government revoked 2 emergency decrees at the heart of the protest. After days of popular pressure in the streets on Sunday night, President Juan Orlando Hernandez withdrew 2 decrees which the protesters say will privatize healthcare and education. But he announced 2 new decrees. The protesters said they were not consulted about the new legislation and that therefore their action would continue. They also condemned the use of police violence against their demonstrations and demanded an impartial investigation. Late on Sunday, President Juan Orlando Hernandez addressed the nation in order to announce the repeal of 2 of the most controversial policies his government had proposed and to call an end to the indefinite strikes from doctors and teachers.
Following talks with the Commissioner for Human Rights, we have agreed on the need for emergency decrees in both the education and healthcare sectors. This includes the establishing of a dialogue table in order to improve public education, which must be free and easily accessible, as per our Constitution. Another dialogue table must be set up for the healthcare sector, in order to improve our systems and to guarantee it remains free. We want all sectors of society to take part in these talks, to improve our systems with transparency and accountability, so that these rights are guaranteed for all our people.
Our correspondent from the ground, Gilda Silvestrucci, has the latest.
The marches in Tegucigalpa continue, and they will continue throughout the day until a true agreement is set. That is according to the doctors and teachers marching here today. They do not believe in the decrees issued by President Juan Orlando Hernandez, and therefore the marches continue not only in Tegucigalpa but also in other parts of the country, where police and military have started to repress the protesters.
We thank Gilda for that report. The Mexican foreign minister is set to start talks with representatives of the U.S. government over their migration dispute. These meetings come after the U.S. threatened to slap punitive tariffs on its southern neighbor if it didn't do something to stop the flow of Central American migrants fleeing their homes.
Mexico is willing to continue working, as I already mentioned, with the United States to address issues of common concern. Our people are united by the deep friendship and history, and we wish our governments to remain friends. We have faith in dialogue and politics as means to avoid costly and unnecessary confrontations. We believe that our countries can reach a deal and how to face a matter in which our approaches are different. Slapping tariffs, along with the decision to cancel aid programs to Northern Central American countries, could have a counterproductive effect and will not reduce the flow of migration. Tariffs could cause financial and economic instability, which means that Mexico could reduce its capacity to address migration flows and to offer alternatives to new migrants who have recently arrived in Mexico.
Our correspondent in Washington, D.C., Elena Duarte, has the details.
On Monday morning in the U.S. Capitol, Mexico's Foreign Minister Marcelo Ebrard held a press conference to provide updates on his trip to the U.S., a visit which seeks to establish negotiations between Mexico and the U.S. government after President Donald Trump announced a 5% tariff on all Mexican imports starting on June 10th if the Latin American country does not control immigration. Mexican officials have revealed that should these tariffs take effect, many jobs would be lost. Ebrard reaffirmed his stance in favor of dialogue, saying he will have meetings with the U.S. Secretary of Commerce, the representative for Agriculture, and the representative for Trade, Robert Lighthizer. According to Jesus Seade, Vice Minister for North America at Mexico's Foreign Ministry, these 5% tariffs could cost Mexico U.S. $350 billion per year. But if you recall, Trump had said that these tariffs would gradually increase and could reach 25%. Officials from the Latin American country have, however, insisted that immigration should be treated side by side with the U.S. Meanwhile, via his Twitter account, Trump has said that he's not in favor of dialogue. Instead, he's calling for actions, not words.
We thank Elena Duarte for that report. And U.S. President Donald Trump and his delegation have arrived in the United Kingdom for a 3-day state visit. They met with the Queen and were taken on a tour at Westminster Abbey, where they laid a wreath at the grave of the unknown soldier. Talks between Trump and outgoing Prime Minister Theresa May will begin on Tuesday, where they are expected to discuss climate change and Chinese technology firm Huawei. However, anti-Trump protests have been planned in several cities, including in London, Manchester, Belfast, and Birmingham. The main protest is planned for Tuesday, but on his first day of the visit, small groups of protesters mingled with the crowds outside Downing Street and Buckingham Palace. There was a heavy police presence and metal barriers in place to contain crowds expected to descend on the area when the U.S. leader arrives.
He proved that with Puerto Rico, the way he didn't really send very much aid out to them after they had the terrible hurricane. He just disdains humanity, it appears, from the surface, you know. And unless you're a blonde, busty woman.
Media law and includes barricada in its cable service. But in a strange reversal of roles, now it is the director of the community channel who will have to appear in court, accused in connection with a protest at which she wasn't even present. So to understand more about this, let's talk to Omar Sanarini, an Argentinian journalist working for the alternative media. Thank you for your time, Omar.
Thank you very much, Stephanie.
Omar, can you explain why the police in Buenos Aires have brought this case against Natalia Vinelli, the director of Barricada TV, and other media representatives?
Yes, indeed. Actually, last December, when we were petitioning in front of the media group in order to comply the law where they have to include Barricada TV and two other alternative medias into the cable guide. Well, actually, we were protesting in front of Clarín in a parking lot where we petitioned actually to speak with someone within the media group in order to give us an explanation why they were not going to where they have to go, that is to respect the law here in Argentina, that is the media law, that they have to include alternative and popular medias within the cable guide. The police at that moment came along and did not allow us to get out of the media group until they actually formed a justice cause in order to persecute actually journalists. We actually think that this is we actually think that what's going on in Argentina with the alternative and popular media is something that is bothering the elites down here because we are informing what the big medias are not informing. This is actually one chapter of what's going on down here, what's called lawfare. This conjunction within the justice, the media, and the political power to persecute those who actually think differently about the policies that the regime of Mauricio Macri is going on here.
Yeah, Omar, why has this case become a symbol of the struggle for alternative media in Argentina?
Actually, this is a symbol of struggle for freedom of speech, as you know, and as we were informing these last 3 years. The freedom of speech and the freedom of protest, the legitimate protest, is something that is being banned permanently. Right now in Argentina, we have over more of 40 political prisoners just because they think different of what Mauricio Macri is doing on the economy in Argentina. This is something that we can actually see that's not only going on down here, but within all the region. The lawfare is the common struggle that the elites are taking over the popular sectors and those who think differently from what Mauricio Macri's regime is actually going on.
Now, Argentina introduced a very progressive media law a few years ago under President Cristina Fernandez. What is the situation with that law now, and what is the attitude of the Macri government?
Well, actually, when Mauricio Macri took over power, the first thing he did was to actually ban part of the law because there was this big important piece of the media that has to go to the third sector. We're talking about those sectors that actually do not compete within the formal capitalist economy, but inform within these structures of the law. This actually very progressive law where within others, the Aborigines could have their own medias. Right now, it's not working. The law's not working. They're actually banning all of it. Though what we have to say is right now there are over 180 media, alternative medias that are looking for become legalized. That is something that this government is not allowing them to do.
Omar, we thank you so much for your time for Telesur English.
Thank you very much, Stephanie.
We have been speaking with Omar Sanarini from Argentina on the demand of La Barricada on the media giant Clarín to comply with the media law and include them in the cable service. Let's take a short break now. Don't go away. Welcome back. Rural communities and campesinos in El Salvador are calling on members of the National Assembly to pass a law on food sovereignty. They want to encourage healthy eating through agriculture based on agroecology.
People here in the community of Esperanza outside San Salvador want a healthy diet free from chemical fertilizers. They're growing fruit, vegetables and grain on small household plots with the help of environmentalists.
We have these agroecological alternatives that are very efficient at decontaminating the soil. You just have to give them their nutrients and time to breathe so that they can produce seeds and fruit that is totally free of chemicals.
Discussion of a law on food sovereignty for El Salvador has been shelved by the National Assembly. Some lawmakers defend the interests of the fertilizer companies and the sugarcane industry, and that harms rural communities.
I hardly use chemicals at all. In fact, I never liked them. And now I know they cause harm to human beings, so I try not to use them. On this plot of maize, I didn't use any gramaxone or other toxic herbicide.
The high price of vegetables, eggs and cereal has forced Mercedes Monge to grow her own food using agroecological techniques.
I don't need to buy at a supermarket or any other market because I have my own market here at home.
As World Environment Day approaches, agroecology or death is the call environmentalists are making to members of the National Assembly. They want them to benefit communities like this with a law that guarantees not just food, but healthy crops and food sovereignty.
The body of Jamaica's former Prime Minister Edward Seaga has arrived in Kingston. He will be accorded a state funeral, the date for which is expected to be announced shortly. The body arrived on a Caribbean Airlines flight just after 6 p.m. on Sunday. A delegation of state officials, led by Prime Minister Andrew Holmes, were on hand for the official reception. The former Prime Minister's family members were also at the airport to receive the body. Seaga died last Tuesday at a Miami hospital after battling cancer. Meanwhile, a mourning period is to be announced by Jamaica's government, and condolence books will open at locations across the island. These include the Office of the Prime Minister in Kingston and Montego Bay, municipal corporations Gordon House, and the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. Effective midnight Sunday, June 2nd, Barbadians have begun paying more for petroleum-based products. The retail price of gasoline will increase from $3.88 per liter to $3.93, while diesel will rise from $3.8 per liter to $3.14. Meanwhile, kerosene and diesel will increase by 2 and 6 cents respectively. Similarly, the prices of liquefied petroleum gas have increased. Barbadian Prime Minister Mia Amor-Motley has announced a $1.5 billion boost for Bridgetown, saying the project could take precedence now that the economy has been stabilized. Motley rolled out a parcel of initiatives, including a multi-million-dollar hotel expansion project and the provision of 3,000 housing units.
For the public servants in this country, those earning, in particular, $4,000 a month and under. And let's be real, a policeman that earning $2,700 a month or $3,000 a month, he can't afford or she can't afford to go and buy a piece of land at $25 a square foot to build a house. They can't do it.
Motley was speaking at a political rally to commemorate the Barbados Labour Party's first anniversary in office. Here, she also boasted of her administration's accomplishments. She says the government had managed to stop the hemorrhaging of the economy.
The bleeding really has stopped. And the bleeding stopped when the country was upgraded by the international institutions that Frontier Stewart viewed as their downgrades as garbage. The bleeding has stopped when people who would not lend us cent one are now lending us again in order to stabilize our condition, because it is like a patient in the hospital that needs blood. If you can't get the blood to stabilize the patient, you can't operate on the patient. Every Bajan out here knows that.
And still in the Caribbean, Antigua's Prime Minister has signed an initiative that would encourage Caribbean countries to take steps to end plastic pollution in the region. The St. John's Declaration was signed on Saturday as the island hosted the Play It Out Festival. The free concert saw the coming together of regional and international artists with policymakers to raise awareness about plastic pollution. During the concert, Prime Minister Gaston Brown thanked the country for their support in the bid to end plastic pollution.
My government acted expeditiously to protect our citizens and our environment. We responded in the strongest possible way by passing legislation that bans the utilization of single-use plastics and styrofoams. Tonight, I thank the citizens and residents of Antigua and Barbuda for your responsiveness, your participation, and commitment to eliminate single-use plastics from our environment.
Social movements in Paraguay have been marching on the National Day Against Child Abuse. They demanded more action from the state as the number of cases of abuse keeps increasing.
Paraguay's National Day Against Child Abuse pays homage to Felicita, a girl who sold mandarins on the street and who was sexually abused and murdered 15 years ago.
It all started 15 years ago when Felicita was on her way home from school and she was abused and killed. Her body was found on the outskirts of Yaguarón. She used to sell fruit on the street.
These social movements are demanding an end to impunity in cases of sexual abuse and exploitation of children. Between January and April of this year, 985 cases were reported, according to official figures.
This case remains unpunished, as do many others where the government has done nothing. The justice system is complicit because it hasn't done anything against the perpetrators.
Organized teenagers are asking the Ministry of Education to implement a comprehensive program of sex education to provide the information and tools that would allow them to protect themselves from such abuse.
Currently, we get about 8 cases reported daily. That is a very frightening number. That's why we're marching today, because we believe that the Paraguayan state hasn't done enough to prevent this.
The different organizations agree that the government hasn't done enough to deal with the alarming figures. They say that prevention is the key to avoiding any kind of abuse.
We want the schools to give us the tools to use against the sexual abuse and exploitation of children, so we can know how to defend ourselves, and so that the policies that already exist can really work.
In 2018 alone, official data shows that 614 girls between the ages of 10 and 14 were forced to give birth as a result of sexual abuse. A cruel reality that raises grave questions about the Paraguayan society.
For the 5th consecutive year, women in Argentina have taken to the streets under the motto, "Not one less," in rejection of femicide and violence against women. Our correspondent, Sabrina Roth, has the details.
In Argentina, the Not One Less feminist movement has flooded the streets. They're demanding an end to economic, sexist, racist, and classist violence against all women. This includes those who identify as lesbian, bisexual, transsexual, and non-binary. Since the movement was founded on June 3, 2015, there have been roughly 1,193 femicides in the country. Every 32 years, a person is murdered, and that's just because of their gender. In this year's march, one of the main requests is the enforcement of a law called Micaela, which demands that government workers be trained. This, as many reports of violence against women have been neglected, which proves why the law is so important. Of all the reports of femicides across the country, only 11% of the accused have gotten restraining orders, while 17.5% have previously been indicted for similar crimes. Meanwhile, out of 1,193 femicides, 31 were against trans women. This is one more reason for Monday's demonstrations. It also marks 1 week since the abortion bill has been brought up for debate in the Argentinian Congress, a bill which seeks to allow legal, free, and safe abortions in the country.
We thank Sabrina Roth for that report. Honduran migrants are moving through Mexico as they make their way towards the country's northern border. The Honduran exodus has not stopped despite Washington's measures to stop the flow of migrants to the United States. The measures have been deemed human rights violations. In his latest declaration on changes to the migratory program, U.S. President Donald Trump has said he will achieve two main objectives: to guarantee border security and to attract the best and most brilliant migrants. We'll be back very soon. Welcome back. The Mauritanian Constitutional Court has cleared 6 aspirants as candidates for the country's upcoming presidential elections. Mauritania will go to the polls to elect a new president on June 22nd, and campaigns are expected to kick off early this month. If there is no outright winner in the first round of elections, a runoff vote will be held on July 6th, according to a presidential decree. President Mohamed Ould Abdel Aziz is to step down after 2 terms in office.
There is an essential point for me. It's reorganization and modernization of our armed and security forces with the Republicans in order for our country to face the dangers that assail it.
Muslim ministers in Sri Lanka have resigned on Monday, accusing the government of failing to guarantee security to minority Islam followers. The ministers and their deputies said they feared for their lives as protests against Muslims escalate, following suicide bombings that took place during Easter holidays. Their decision comes after Buddhist monks had earlier on given the government a deadline to fire Muslim provincial governors and a minister over the bombings. 3 weeks ago, mobs of people destroyed Muslim properties, killing 1 person in Sri Lanka's northwestern province.
As members of the Muslim community represented in the government, holding variety of positions as cabinet ministers, state ministers and deputy ministers, have taken a decision today to resign from all the positions and request the government to expedite any inquiry against anyone among us and bring it to a conclusion without delay. We expect that to happen within a month so that we will be vindicated from these allegations.
And lastly, Pakistan has stunned tournament favorites England by beating them by 14 runs in today's Cricket World Cup match at Trent Bridge. Pakistan trounced the host with 348 runs for 8 wickets, with England trailing with 334 runs for 9 wickets. And with that story, we've come to the end of this news brief. These and other stories, as always, find them on our website at telesurenglish.net. And also join us on social media. We are on Facebook, on Twitter, and on Instagram. For Telesur English, I am Estefania Bravo.